The decisions we make often determine our happiness, but perhaps not in the way we think. How do we make decisions? Well, some of us may strive to find the absolute best option, while others may just know what they need and go for the first option that meets their criteria. If we were to guess which one of these styles was related to higher levels of happiness, we may assume it would be the first one. After all, the more effort we put into making a decision, the better the quality of our choice and the happier we are, right? But science suggests otherwise. In fact, sometimes the more we think about a decision, the less happy we can become. Today's lesson has two parts. Part 1 examines two types of decision-making styles, maximizing and satisficing. Part 2 discusses how an abundance of choice affects our happiness. When we make a decision, we will usually be presented with a set of options. After considering the value of each option, we make a choice. But how we arrive at that choice depends on what kind of person we are. According to the cognitive psychologist Herbert A. Simon, there are two distinct styles of decision-making, maximizing and satisficing. Maximizing is a style of decision-making marked by an exhaustive search of all possible options. People who maximize strive to get the very best out of every decision. They critically think about a host of considerations for every choice before deciding, and will likely do significant research into details other people may find unimportant. For example, let's say we have a friend who makes decisions by maximizing, and they want to buy a face wash. They don't have any standards for a good face wash, but they know they want to have the very best in the market. To determine what makes a great face wash, they will do extensive research. Perhaps they'll research their skin type, the active ingredients in each wash, and compare different price points. They'll also likely read customer and blog reviews in detail. Also, because they want to make sure they're purchasing the best quality face wash on the market, they will examine dozens of face washes. Of course, with all this choice, it may be hard to make a decision. With so many options, there will be plenty of good and bad features about each. So it is hard to make up their mind. Even when they buy a great face wash, they will regret their decision because they will wonder if they made the right choice. And when evaluating options, maximizers tend to rely on external sources of information, such as reputation, social status, and utility. They seek out what they feel has the greatest objective benefit based on external standards. For example, when buying a car, a maximizer may choose one with more space, even though they may not need more space, because it's objectively the best value for money. Herbert A. Simon identified three major components in maximizing. There is a desire to have the best possible option, a willingness to consider every possible option, and a difficulty in making decisions. People who maximize tend to be uncomfortable choosing something unless they're fully confident it has the best quality. Other studies have suggested that maximizing behavior is associated with perfectionism and a restless need to make sure everything is as good as it can be. The opposite of maximizing is the decision-making style known as satisficing. Rather than critically considering each option when making a decision, people who satisfice evaluate their choices until they find one that's good enough. Satisficing is defined by a need for convenience, speed, and an acceptance of a choice that may be less than ideal. People who satisfice aren't concerned with perfection, but with finding the best option in the least amount of time, with relatively minimal effort. For example, let's go back to the same face wash, but this time with another friend who satisfices. They have a few standards about a face wash. They want something that smells great, with nice packaging, for under 150 RMB. When they find something that meets their standards, they simply buy it. It's good enough. Unlike maximizers, satisficers don't need the very best. They just want something that meets their needs. As a result, they are less likely to worry about making the wrong decision. If something meets their needs, then why would they need something else? Here's another example. When buying a car, a satisficer may want fuel efficiency because they have a long commute, and heated seats because they're comfortable. They wouldn't care that extra room is an objectively better feature among the cars they're looking at. The feature does not personally benefit them, so it wouldn't impact their decision. According to Herbert A. Simon, people satisfice because they often lack the time and patience to think too carefully about decisions. It's not that they're lazy, though. While we tend to think of ourselves as rational, the truth is, it takes a lot of cognitive resources to exhaustively weigh a series of options. Not to mention, we often make decisions in time-sensitive circumstances. Imagine we're going to book a plane ticket to go on vacation. If we hunt online, we may be able to find a great deal for a top airline. But the process of carefully searching different websites to simultaneously compare different rates and services may eat away a large chunk of our day. Not to mention, if we spend several days researching, flight prices will only go up. So in the end, we choose a relatively affordable flight on a brand name airline. We likely reason it's good enough. Satisficing behavior is partly the reason that modern marketing and advertising exist. Companies recognize that many people will not devote resources to seriously consider the differences between products. So they attempt to sway people's decisions through psychological triggers like discounts, packaging, and appeals to emotion. It should be noted that maximizing and satisficing exist on a spectrum. Most people fall somewhere in the middle. But why do some people show maximizing behavior while others show satisficing behavior in the first place? There are a few potential explanations. Some scientists have suggested that we are genetically predisposed to the way we make decisions. Several studies have examined the decision-making behavior between twins. They have revealed that maximizing and satisficing behavior was often present in both twins, suggesting that it may be inherited. However, other psychologists have asserted that our decision-making behavior is a reflection of our personality. The Big Five personality model consists of 5 common personality traits, including nervousness, willingness to accept situations, and a willingness to do things well. Research has found that maximizing behavior correlates with high nervousness. Still others have suggested that those who exhibit maximizing behavior have a high need for cognition. This means that they have a strong need to use logic and reason to structure situations in their life. For these people, exhausting every choice is part of an organized system of decision-making. However, no studies have conclusively established why we make decisions the way we do. Still, while the reason for our decision-making behavior may be a mystery, its impact on our health, happiness, and well-being is not. In our Dongni course, Level 6, Unit 1, 2 friends discuss how their choices have affected their lives. One man seems unhappy about the current state of his life, especially living in the city. Even though he made a decision to live in the city, he still can't stop thinking about living in the country. It sounds like this man is a maximizer. Unsure of whether he made the right choice, he keeps thinking about other options. And studies have shown that maximizers tend to regret their decisions. Studies suggest that maximizing behavior often has a negative impact on our sense of happiness and general satisfaction with life. Compared to satisficers, maximizers generally experience lower levels of happiness and self-esteem, as well as higher levels of anxiety and regret. Why is this? When people make decisions by maximizing, they may become indecisive. With so many choices, it can be overwhelming to pick the right one. The desire to make the best possible decision often leads to a sense of inner conflict and anxiety. Let's take a look at an example. A psychologist named Barry Schwartz conducted a study of maximizers that required participants to choose from 20 types of genes. The participants were anxious during the decision-making process. When they faced too many attractive options, participants began to worry about potential missed opportunities. Hand in hand with being overwhelmed by choices is a sense of making the wrong choice. Maximizers tend to feel as if there may have been a better option available. For example, when apartment hunting, maximizers may continue to look at apartments even after they sign the lease. And studies have shown that this often leads maximizers to feel regret about their decision. They may feel restless and unwilling to accept their decision. Regret can often lead to self-blame for not being smarter or more prepared, which can further lead to unhappiness. Going back to our 20 genes study, participants were reported to be largely unsatisfied with their choice, even though they had thought carefully about it. The anxiety about missing out made it hard to commit, and once they did, they felt unhappy about it. Of course, to a maximizer, they may want to look at a number of options because they want to decrease the possibility of making the wrong decision. But unfortunately, this strategy often backfires. The more options they choose, the more they'll be dissatisfied with the results, because in their mind, they had so many more choices. And while it's common to assume that maximizers achieve objectively better results because they are so thorough, this is not guaranteed. Several studies suggest that the opposite is possible. For example, one study examined the accuracy of World Cup predictions between maximizers and satisficers. All participants had the same number of options, but maximizers took more time before making a decision and expected to have more accurate predictions. But in fact, they did worse. The extra time led them to overthink and focus too much on irrelevant details. Or consider this study by a professor at New York University. Participants were given 4 decks of cards. 2 decks contained positive cards, 2 contained negative cards. Each time a card was drawn, the participant received feedback on whether they had pulled a positive or negative card. After sampling around 50 cards, most participants were able to deduce which were the optimal decks. However, those participants identified as maximizers had trouble deciding on the positive deck, even after 50 cards. They were unsure of the deck's quality and worried about limiting their options, so they kept drawing from the negative decks. But this is not to say that maximizers always make poor decisions or have trouble making them. In fact, their exhaustive weighing of options occasionally has some upsides for them. Some studies suggest that maximizers can achieve better outcomes when making decisions than satisficers. For example, one study among college graduates with high maximizing behavior revealed that these students, on average, were paid $7,400 more than their peers. Other studies have suggested that maximizers may be more motivated and focused than non-maximizers. Their desire to make the best possible decision causes them to be more methodical about assessing their options. For example, someone who wants to find an optimal deal on an apartment is probably more likely to consider issues that a satisficer wouldn't. They may consider the apartment's proximity to the train station, relationships with neighbors, the expected property value in 10 years, whether its windows are insulated, and so on. The problem is that even if their behavior leads to positive outcomes, maximizers don't see them that way. In the same study of college graduates, all the maximizer graduates reported to be unhappy with the jobs they had, despite their high income. They were haunted by the prospect of a better opportunity existing and could not be satisfied with their situation. Satisficing seems to have the opposite effect on people's happiness. Even though maximizers can achieve better outcomes when making decisions than satisficers, settling for less seems to result in greater contentment. Because satisficers make decisions based on personal standards, they are less likely to experience regret than maximizers. They simply have their needs and they choose things that are acceptable to them. If we need a fuel-efficient car for our long commute and we find one, then our need has been met. There's no need to worry about whether a better option has eluded us. Also, ironically, satisficers may ultimately end up maximizing without knowing it. In his research, Barry Schwartz discovered that if satisficers encounter a better option after making a decision, their personal standards allow them to reject their old option and accept the superior one. They recognize it as more suitable, adjusting their standards, but they do not seem to stress about it. In English, we may describe this sort of behavior as easy come, easy go. That means that something acquired without much effort can be abandoned without much regret or stress. Of course, while satisficers tend to report a higher level of satisfaction, their relaxed personal standards may sometimes result in objectively lower quality options. Such a decision-making style may be acceptable when we're shopping for shoes, but could become problematic with important issues. For example, let's say someone has inherited $20,000 and wants to invest it, but they are inexperienced when it comes to handling such a large sum. While a maximizer may research the issue thoroughly, considering issues like interest rates, long-term gains, and market stability, the satisficer may be quicker to pick a good enough option, decreasing the potential return on their investment. Or consider the study of job quality between recent college graduate students. Among the group, those who exhibited satisficing behavior tended to find jobs with a 20% lower salary than maximizers. Being too easily satisfied may hurt our motivation to find something better. Nevertheless, Barry Schwartz noted that satisficers may still maintain high standards for themselves. It's just that they happen to be happier than maximizers. He said, maximizers make good decisions and end up feeling bad about them. Satisficers make good decisions and end up feeling good about them. So in conclusion, when making decisions, while there may be a time to be thorough, we may be a little bit happier when we focus on our needs. After all, what's more important, having the objective best or being more content with our daily life? And is there really a best of anything? Even if we have every option in front of us, we will need to make compromises, because no one thing will be superior in all respects. Instead, we may want to think more about what's practical. As Schwartz says, good enough is virtually always good enough. Now, let's quickly review what we discussed. First, we discussed two types of decision-making styles, maximizing and satisficing. Second, we talked about how an abundance of choice affects our happiness. So that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye.